My summer garden is just not working for me anymore, and after many years of thinking about it, this year I am finally doing something about it. It is time to make a change. Growing tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and squashes here, also known as my favorite things to grow, is an exercise in futility because of our miserable conditions during the summer. It often may surprise you that here in Wilmington, North Carolina, we average more rainfall than anywhere on the Florida Peninsula in any given year. In fact, it is not unusual for us to accumulate anywhere from 40 to 60 inches of rain just from June through the end of September. 4 months. That's how hard it can rain here, and my plants just can't survive that. So typically all of my tomatoes and many of my squashes and cucumbers are either dead or dying come the end of July. I've tried many ways to mitigate this damage. I've tried straw bale gardening. I have tried growing things in large 20-gallon grow bags in an attempt to get better drainage so the rain would drain away more effectively. I've put shade cloth up above, and while all of these things have helped me squeeze out additional weeks, maybe even a month or more out of many of my plants, at the end of the day, come August, everything dies no matter what I try. So I'm finally going to do what I think is the final solution to this problem, and that is build some sort of actual roof over a portion of my garden to try and keep these plants dry, because at the end of the day, it is getting the foliage wet too much and having way too much rainfall hit the roots that is really causing the problem. I've been avoiding this for years because it seemed like a very difficult and expensive proposition, but I think I finally came up with a way that is simple enough that a person like me, who is not very good at building things, can do for only the cost of a couple $100. I spent this winter cleaning out a portion of my raised bed garden where I removed the old raised beds and I moved them and I double stacked them on top of some of my existing raised beds in an effort to make them deeper. And this has been a stroke of brilliance. Everything in these deeper raised garden beds are growing so much better due to the additional soil mass. There are more nutrients in all that soil, and you get better moisture retention and nutrient retention. So my plants are a lot happier, and that has left me with a decent 10-foot wide area to grow tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, and other things underneath a roof. Now, I've already started this process where I put some additional 4x4 posts in that are concreted into the ground. So I'm actually going to start building a little roof structure. And this is not going to be a real structural roof by any means. It's just going to be a few 16-foot 2x4s that I run across that will be sufficient enough to put some greenhouse plastic down and then hold it in place using some furring strips. So this is not a real structure. It is just a very affordable way that I can keep this area of my garden completely dry in the heavy rain. And this will give me flexibility because I will have 10 feet of my garden that will be enclosed, that will both keep the frost off in the winter and the rain off during the summer. And then for plants that actually do like the rainfall, I will still have most of my garden be completely exposed to the elements. So the additional rainfall will do things like rinse out the raised beds of any additional salts, if I over fertilize, if I put too many nutrients down, any kind of problem like that. And also the benefits that rainfall does provide, because there are trace nutrients in rainfall itself. So I will have the best of both worlds. I will still have 2/3 of my raised bed garden be open, but then I will have a nice section of garden that I can grow under cover all year long. Well, over the course of only 2 afternoons, I was able to get the entire roof up above my garden, and surprisingly, I did this all by myself. It was easier than I thought, and it turned out even better than I thought it would. Here is how I did it. To construct the roof, 16-foot 2x4s were mounted to 4x4 posts previously embedded into the ground using compacted native soil and rapid set concrete mix to ensure a strong foundation and frame. I began by installing the 16-foot framing 2x4s on each end of the roof. Then I pulled a string line from end to end to give me a grade line to install the other framing boards up against. This string line line ensures that I will have a straight, consistent roof frame. I installed the string line on each side of the 2x4s to ensure the height and angle of each side of the roof frame is true and consistent. Then I used a digital level to measure the slope of each 2x4. I installed all the 2x4s on a 2% grade to shed water effectively, but keep a relatively small slope to minimize wind loading since I live in a high-risk hurricane zone. Because I was by myself, I installed wood braces on the 4x4 posts to hold the 16-foot pieces of framing lumber in place. I balanced the far end of the 2x4s atop the 4x4 posts, pre-drilled the end of the 2x4 nearest to me, then gently lowered that near end of the 2x4 onto the brace to rest it in place, ensuring the top of the 2x4 touched the string line I pulled to guarantee a straight roof. Once in place, I permanently secured the lumber with 3-inch screws. Once the near side of the lumber was secured, I moved to the far side to secure that end in place using the string line I pulled and the digital level to verify the grade and the height before securing the board. After all the 16-foot 2x4 trusses were secured, it was time to begin framing the edges. I used 1x4s to do this because they are very lightweight and I wanted to minimize the weight bearing down on the 4x4s and the trusses since this is a very simple design. After all, this roof only needs to hold a piece of greenhouse plastic. I used 10-foot 1x4s to span each truss, securing them with 3-inch screws at the center of each truss. The end result was a pretty darn good looking frame if I do say so myself. Everything turned out straight and strong, and this will be more than adequate to accommodate some greenhouse plastic and keep all my plants dry. Not half bad for $200 in materials and 1 8-hour day's worth of work, all by myself with simple power tools, basic construction knowledge, and a severe lack of construction skills. If I can do this, a lot of people can do this. This enclosed area right here is 10 feet wide by 35 feet long, so I will have 350 square feet of growing space that will be underneath a roof, so I won't have to worry about the rainfall anymore. Now in reality, it's going to be much less square footage than that to actually grow in because I will be building raised beds in this area. I will be taking these old perimeter beds that I do not like, I'll be pulling them apart and harvesting that lumber to build a series of 4 feet wide by 10 feet long raised beds that are double depth. So they will be 16 to 18 inches in depth. So that will give me some nice deep raised beds to grow that get frost protection in the winter and rain protection in the summer. So I will basically be able to grow them completely sheltered from the rainfall with a frost cover, but I'll still have the free airflow of the wide open garden, and I will still be able to get visited by things like dragonflies and bees and ladybugs and all our friendly neighborhood insects. But that begs the question, what's up with this overhang section right here? Well, I originally thought about only buying 10-foot long boards and enclosing just that area of my garden, but it was only like $2 more a board to go for the big 16-footers. So I thought to myself, if I overhang a 6-foot section right here, I will be able to have a completely enclosed overhang abutting my garden. And I can take my potted fig trees and I can move my container fig trees underneath this protected area. Now, I don't think I'll be able to fit anywhere close to all of them, but half of them are better than nothing. And if there is one fruit in your yard that hates getting wet, it is the fig. If they get any rainfall on them, they split, they burst, they get visited by SWD and other terrible insect pests that eat them alive or lay eggs in them. Rainfall and figs do not mix. So to have a completely enclosed overhang for my figs or my most rain-sensitive container garden, well, I think that is also going to be a game changer as well. So I'll be able to push 2 aisles of figs right here pretty comfortably. I'll have to reorient the drip irrigation. It'll be a little bit of work, but at the end of the day, I think I will have a much more functional and more productive garden. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to get the roof on my garden just yet, and that's because the roof I'm going to use is a big piece of 40 feet long by 16 feet wide greenhouse plastic that I bought. And it has been so windy all weekend, and it's supposed to be windy all throughout next week. So I'm not going to be able to put put that greenhouse plastic on until I get a calm day on a weekend. But fortunately, I have plenty of time to do that because we don't get the really bad rains here until late May, early June. But I did think about how I'm going to do that. So what I did was, around the perimeter of this roof, I put 1x4 outdoor pressure treated boards, and that is what the greenhouse plastic is going to lay on. And then I'm going to take these 8-foot furring strips and I'm going to place them down on top of the greenhouse plastic and screw them into the 1x4s. And that is going to hold that greenhouse plastic in place permanently. I would expect that greenhouse plastic to last something like 5 to 10 years. Ideally, I would buy polycarbonate or something like that, but it would cost over $1,000 to put a polycarbonate roof on top of that. And that's not really worth it to me when you can get a piece of greenhouse plastic for like 80 bucks that does the job. So the 16-foot 2x4s are being held up in the air by the original existing 4x4 post, and the new 4x4 post that I put in sloped to a 2% grade, so I shed any excess rainwater. Then I have the 1x4 boards that I was talking about. They are going to be what the greenhouse plastic sits on, and then I will attach the furring strips to those 1x4 boards in order to hold that greenhouse plastic in place permanently. And then every single one of these trusses, it's a double truss, because I needed a place where I could demarc each of the 1x4 boards. And I left a little gap in between on purpose in case this wood decides to swell over time with the humidity and rainfall. So I left a little gap there to account for that. So you can see these double trusses are spaced every 8 feet. That's way too far. Ideally, you'd want them more like 3 to 4 feet, but this is the best I can do. And I built this entire thing with less than $200 all in on lumber. So overall, I'm really happy with the way this came out. For somebody with not really any building skills, I think I did a pretty good job. Then here is the overhang portion. Again, you can see I have that 1x4 board on the end that is going to support the other end of the greenhouse plastic, and then we'll use the furring strips to hold that end in place. And in case we need any more lateral supports, we will just place furring strips up against these trusses in order to compress that greenhouse plastic down and make sure it never goes anywhere and it is effectively permanent. So I think it'll be a very functional build. So it's been about a week and a half since I initially filmed the roof construction, and you can see how far along I've gotten. I have removed all of the perimeter beds that used to exist here, and I've outfitted the entire area with weed barrier, so I will have a weed-free environment permanently for the future. Of course, I saved all that existing soil that was in my perimeter beds and I stockpiled it here, where I will eventually transfer it to the new raised beds that I'm building right here. And as you can see, I've built my very first raised bed. Now, because I'm dealing with a tighter area, I can't build my raised beds as long as the other beds in my garden. These are only 7-foot long raised beds instead of my normal 10-foot long raised beds, but I will be able to fit a whole lot more of them in this space. I will be able to fit 5 of them. So instead of having 2 long beds, I'll have 5 slightly narrower beds. So I will actually have more growing space, and because I will have a roof up above, I should get a lot more production in my beds because I won't lose as many crops to the bad weather here. So hopefully that gives you a great mental image of what this final area will look like when it's all complete. If you are not happy with your garden or its performance, you are not stuck with it the way it is. I made a lot of mistakes laying out my garden initially that I had to learn throughout the years weren't working for me. And now that I know that these problems exist, I know how to correct them. And I think this new build is going to be much more functional, and it's not going to occupy any additional space. In fact, I may actually be able to compact the space a little bit and grow more food in an even smaller area. So let this be a lesson to you. If you're not happy with something, make a change. So everybody, I sure hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and please ring the notification bell so you're notified when I release more videos like these. This garden build is not complete. I will have more videos coming out about how to build the perfect raised beds, how to run drip irrigation, how to fill them up with soil. All that content is coming as I have to shift things around and make some changes. So stay tuned to that. If you're curious about any of the products that I use in real life in my garden, they are all linked down below in my Amazon storefront in the video description. So expand the video description, click on the Amazon storefront link, and you'll see everything I use in real life. And while you're down there, please check out my spread shop for custom merch if you want to support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see all of you again on the next video. Dale and I were outside throwing around his big stuffed lamb. Now we have to keep this on top of the refrigerator because Dale kills stuffed animals, and I had to go back outside and take out the trash, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, Dale is going to destroy this stuffed animal, but here he is. He's inside his kennel, just hanging out and chilling. Dale, do you love your stuffed lamb so much that you didn't want to kill it? This is so unprecedented. Any of his stuffed animals, he just takes them on his bed and he surgically removes all of the fluff out of them. But for whatever reason, Dale decided not to kill his lamb. Oh, Dale, that's so good, Dale. That's so good. I don't know what to say right now. I'm very proud of you.